O'Keefe has been in involuntary patient hospital since the night he allegedly assaulted his partner. If the matter isn't dealt with under the Mental Health Act, his lawyer
ask that everybody just pops themselves on mute. If that's all right.
Coming for the Crown Casino Empire to close in the lockdown. The gaming giant saw.
Camera off?
Yep.
All right, we might get started. I think that's everybody that needs to come in for now. So we might kick off. So welcome everybody to the final night of the AFL Barwon Game Plan Educational Week. It's been a very successful week so far, and I hope that you've all taken a lot out of it. This is proudly presented by AFL Barwon and Leisure Networks, supported by Epworth Hospital, Corio Bay Health, Victor Sports and Zena Sport. A message quickly from Epworth: there is nothing more important than your health, as I'm sure we all know. When a diagnosis and treatment is delayed, it can have a serious impact on your health. Do not wait to seek treatment if you are unwell. Epworth is ready to care for you and your loved ones. Ask your GP for a referral to an Epworth accredited specialist in Geelong or Melbourne. Sorry, I'm just going to let a few more people in. I wish to begin by acknowledging the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nations, the traditional owners of the land on which I'm presenting on today. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land you are all listening in from today. I wish to pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Please keep yourself on mute during the presentation. The chat function will be available throughout the entire session, and you can place any questions that you have and they'll be answered towards the end of the session. Also, please note that this session is being recorded. Our presenter tonight is Tariq Bayrackley. Tariq is a manager of the Victorian Women's Trust Harm Prevention Sports Initiative, Club Respect. Previously, Tariq was involved with Sports Without Borders, which supported social inclusion through sport for new and emerging communities. Tonight's session, Tariq will present on Club Respect, a space he's been heavily involved in. Not only will Tariq present ideas and initiatives to ensure your whole sporting club is a respectful one, but also to help empower you to leave a positive mark on the club. Please all welcome Tariq.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a moment. This worked before. And okay, is that, what can you see on the screen, George? Yep, all good? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're all good. Oh, you were.
Was. Hold on. My apologies. Great start.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Sorry, Joy, if I do that, what can you see on the screen?
Yeah, just your presentation, and now your notes are up there as well.
Okay. See, I don't want the notes up. All right, good.
No.
Okay, so my name's Tariq Bayrackley. I really appreciate the opportunity to be out here today. Thank you to AFL Barwon and thank you to Leisure Networks for inviting Club Respect to be a part of this camp this whole week. I just wanted to sort of introduce myself first. I'm a child of a migrant. So I was born in Australia. My parents came to Australia in the 70s. And my connection to sport started quite early when my brother and I were just kids. I was 9. I was mad footy fan, and I wanted to play footy but my dad went behind my back and started a soccer club with his mates, and then took us to the training and took us to the soccer training, and we just actually haven't looked back since. So I played soccer my whole life, but the club was really special for us, for me and my brother and our entire family. Actually, it was a place where my dad was the secretary for a number of years, and what would happen is at the end of every training, at the end of every match, or home matches, my parents and all their mates would basically just hang around, and all the kids would just spend the entire Sunday at the club. Mum would set up the volleyball nets, and all the parents would play, and it would just be the best. My best friends today are from those days, and my mum, who's 61, still plays volleyball because of what happened at those in that environment. So since then, I've, as mentioned before, I was part of Sports Without Borders, which is around social inclusion for refugees and migrants. And now I'm working with Club Respect, which I'll outline a little bit more. But I'm also a community member, so at the Kingsbury United Soccer Club, and my main role there is around club development. Quite an interesting role, and I'm the only one there that doesn't have my kid playing because my kid's too young. So I'll go to the next slide. Yep. So thanks for the acknowledgement earlier. This is just an acknowledgement from Club Respect. I just wanted to have a bit of a mention as well. As a migrant, as a kid of a migrant, it was so fascinating. I'll call myself a brown person. It was so fascinating being a brown person growing up and thinking that the challenges for Aboriginal communities or Indigenous communities was a purely white person thing. I know that might not sound, I don't know how it sounds, but that's the way it felt. And I felt like within multicultural communities, or within the communities that I was in, which is the Turkish background, we had the impression that it was an issue for white people, and we're also trying to find our way, and Aboriginal people were trying to find their way, and it was just an unusual experience. So obviously throughout that time, or since that time, I've been able to grow and reflect and learn a lot about Aboriginal culture, and I'm glad I have. So anyway, encourage everyone to do so. Look back on the past of what's happened on the land that we're actually in. So, and just let you know, I'm on the Wurundjeri land, which is in the northern parts of Melbourne and up. So Club Respect is, so essentially Club Respect is about helping sports clubs develop and maintain a culture of respect. We are part of the harm prevention initiatives of Victorian Women's Trust, and that gives us 30 plus years of knowledge and experience, particularly with dealing with women's issues, but also being able to develop institutions or develop areas of society with respect. And so the Club Respect website, we've got practical tools, they're all free. We've got a panel of expertise platform, which is quite an interesting platform where any club for free at no cost essentially can ask a question, and we go out to our panel of expertise to be able to just ask them and then relay the response back to clubs. So it's underutilized. Please jump on board. Leisure networks are in there as well. So it's a really useful resource. We've got a podcast series coming up, which is quite fascinating. It'll be me and Rana, who's actually in the next session that's being hosted. We'll be talking about essentially Club Respect and what that means for sports clubs. So the next two things I want to talk about are really interesting, and they're really important for what Club Respect is about. It's essentially our formula, and it's the formula actually for a lot of Victorian Women's Trust's harm prevention initiatives. It's a significant part of the business or the organisation of Victorian Women's Trust, and that is that if we believe that we can increase respect in a sports club or in a school or wherever it might be, that will decrease the levels of harm. It might not eradicate it, but it will decrease the levels of harm. Increase respect and build that framework within a club, for instance, and it will lead to less abuse, less violence, less anger, and that's our formula. That's what we believe. So this is essentially what I'm going to be talking about. The importance of respect, and that's that first component I talked about, and then the common club issues. And when I'm going through the common club issues, I wouldn't mind if people were able to, after that, maybe give some of their comments about what some of their common club issues are. By no means am I going to provide an exhaustive list. So it'd be really nice to get some comments from you and actually make this a bit more engaging. And I'll try not to talk monotone or too much, but so that'll be the first thing. And then after that, I'm going to be talking about what that means for clubs and how they can use the sort of club respect framework, and finish off with the scenario and some questions. So the first thing we talk about is respect, and what does respect actually mean? The way that we'd see respect is that it's the ability to be able to find the worth in another person. Being able to see the best side, being able to find the common ground and actually get to a point of appreciation despite differences that you will have, because every club does have differences, but barring the differences, being able to communicate with another person and find that they've got something of worth to you and the club. So instinctively, sometimes we might be inclined to not see the best side in other people, not that we're necessarily being disrespectful. So that's, we're not saying that people are disrespectful by default. It's maybe there might be an indifference. And so the idea of respect, and the idea is that you're actually being genuine in your approach with other people and the club. And that goes both ways. And essentially that's what we're wanting in a club environment, helping you and helping other people to be able to understand what they're feeling and what you're feeling, and being able to do that. Not easy, I get it, but that's essentially what we're trying to do, because we believe that if we can get to that point, and if you've got respect for another person despite opinions or disagreements, we believe that if you've got that intention or that purpose with that person, you're less likely to want to harm or abuse, or you're less likely to want to be angry at the very least with that person. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about respect. So next thing I want to talk about is some of the common club issues. So we see that club issues will happen, and they're going to happen in a variety of different ways. We get that. And as I mentioned right at the top, we're looking at prevention of these particular issues. And so that means that, we want a reduction in these, and we want to create a system that can reduce them. But we need to identify what it actually looks like first. So we've got bad behavior and discrimination, and these are the two that we think that most club issues will fall under. So our first example is around a yelling coach. So this yelling coach yells and screams at players. They're overly involved in the game. Emotions are always high. They believe aggression is a better tactic than a cool head and composure. They're very difficult to give constructive feedback. The intimidating parent. The parent is loud, intimidating, and actually quite scary. They use this aggression to get what they want with the coach and the committee. They are abusive to their own children, their own team, club, opposition teams, and the referee. And we'll talk about the intimidating parent a bit later as well. Arrogant player, arrogant in victory, childish in defeat. They sledge players on the field, and nothing is sacred, anything goes. Outside the club, they give the club a bad reputation. Their behaviour can undo a club's positive reputation and culture. And example 4, referee abuse. Everyone at the ground, your team and the opposition, abusing the referee. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's definitely, whilst we don't agree with it, it seems to be widely accepted within crowds anyway. And I know that a lot of clubs and organisations and leagues are trying to stop it, but it's one of those things that always slips through, and it's a huge issue. But in any case, it does cause trauma, and it's harmful for referees, umpires, and not to minimise the trauma of a referee, but it's also setting an incredibly bad example for any kids that are around. So I jumped through too quick on that one, but yeah, which of these examples do you see at your club? And I'll ask in a moment if there's any of these that you see, or if there's some that you haven't been popped up here and that you thought might be worthwhile to mention. And then we go down discrimination. You know, I get that some of these can have you know, political connotations as well, and that's just the nature of you know, discrimination to some extent, I think. But example one, player making homophobic slurs, you know, in the change rooms, for instance, whether there is or isn't you know, people from the LGBT community in the club. Clubs giving preference for certain teams. Now that can be quite contentious as well, because you know, let's say women's teams being not given priority on the main field, but then that can obviously go both ways, because you know, clubs might believe that they've got substantial reason as to why that can't happen right now. So, but that can lead to discrimination if it's not considered, and if there's, you know, being dismissive of queries that come with that. Committees difficult to enter. So committees can be quite, they can create a culture within themselves, and they can be quite fun. And a lot of people don't want to break that, because you want your time to be fun, and you found something that's fun, and the committee's awesome, and you want that committee to stay. But of course, you know, if your constitution says that people can join your committee, then you obviously need to be open to new people entering that committee, and not just entering the committee, but actually being able to make a substantial difference, or a substantial impact within that committee, and not be hindered. And so that can form some form of discrimination as well. Last example I've got here is parents being suspicious of ethnic groups. You know, an easy example for me is you know, people that are from African backgrounds often find it a little bit more difficult to sort of get into some of the in crowds, or the, you know, the what's, you know, feel a sense of belonging within a club. And I know that there's genuine interest from a lot of clubs to make the initial approach. Maybe it's not necessarily suspicion, but there's definitely isn't a you know, an extension that goes beyond niceties. And so that can form a level of discrimination as well. I just wanted to add something that was quite topical, and not necessarily because of the racism aspect of it, but more so because of what I think this represents. What you see, the writing that you see there is straight from the Do Better report. The Common for 10 years ago in some of their reports as well, and some of their code of conducts and values. So the reason why I put this up, not necessarily because of the racism, but because of what I think how I think this reflects into other issues other than racism as well. So for instance, we've got the direct discrimination, and that to me is a bit more of a, you know, it's out there, it's a racial slur. It's easier to pick up. And then you've got your indirect discrimination that occurs through, you know, from a club perspective, or for Collingwood's perspective, the leaders within the club, or the structures within the club haven't made people feel supported, and in fact have had a negative consequence. And the part that's been a real challenge for Collingwood, according to the report, has been the indirect discrimination and the direct discrimination, but the indirect discrimination as well. And that's been a really fascinating thing for me to be watching, because it means that if you get what that means, if you get what it means to that indirect discrimination in racist terms can have an impact on people that are feeling like they're being discriminated against, then you may be able to take that and take it into gender and the way that potentially a woman, for instance, might feel because of they're women in a club which might be a traditionally male sport. Or you might be able to see how this can get reflected in sexuality and sexual orientation, and how a person from the LGBTQI plus community might feel within a club. So that's the only reason I mentioned that, because I feel like understanding that, I know some people might not agree with the report and the consequences it's already had for the Collingwood Footy Club, but these are some of the takeaways that I got from that. Okay. Right. So George, I think now's a good time. If anyone would be interested to maybe add some comment or provide some commentary on what some of those common issues, if they actually resonated with you, or if there's any questions at this point.
I'm just about to ask everybody to unmute. So if you've got any comments or any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. Everyone's shy.
Maybe people want to add some comments in the chat, and if there's, I can't see the chat from here. If there's anyone that's made any comments, if not, that's fine. I'm happy to continue.
Yeah, keep going for now, and then as we get some through, then I can let you know.
Okay, great. So I've talked about why it means to be respectful within the club, or how important respect is. I've talked about what some of the common issues are, and the formula for me is pretty simple: increase respect. That will decrease the occurrences of these common issues that we just mentioned, into the bad behaviour and the discrimination. The next section, or the next thing I'll be talking about, is pretty much what a club respect framework might be, or what it might look like for a committee that wanted to sort of take on, wanted to go for it, wanted to say, all right, we're gonna actually, we want our culture, we want our club to be a respectful place and respectful culture. And so what I'm going to talk about next is all about that. So the first thing I wanted to mention about this is that, I did mention that it was a harm prevention project, and what that means for us is that a lot of the things that we're talking about are things that clubs can do proactively, must do proactively. Later on, I'll talk about something that a club can do reactively, and that's similar to what you might know as bystander intervention, or something along those lines. I'm not going to go too deep into bystander. That's a whole another world. But I wanted to mention how Club Respect deals with that, and the resource that we have that links right back into what I'm about to say about the proactive side of things. So proactivity, these are the four things that we're talking about. There's 4 steps, if you will. So I'm just going to reference the Do Better report again. This is my favorite quote from the report. So if you don't have your screen up for whatever reason, I'll just read it out. It is a mistake to dismiss such work around establishing the values of an organisation as insignificant and merely symbolic. The process involves reflection, conversation, debate, and further reflection. The result assists in shaping the culture, identity, and priorities for the club. Those values can, when properly articulated, guide everyone within the club in relation to their behaviour and the standards expected. So, you know, one of the issues with hold on, yeah. So I'll just go to the next one as well. But one of the issues with the footy club, with the Collingwood Football Club, according to the report, was, and I don't have this quote up here, however, there is a gap, a very big one, between what Collingwood Football Club says it stands for and what it does. Now, I'm not going to pick on Collingwood anymore, and you know, I'm sorry if it's come that way. I was just compelled by the report and what it means. I think you'll find Ryan is going to talk about more about that, because she's just joined the subcommittee that's going to actually work on this for the club. So it's all very exciting for everyone involved. So I suppose this is the thing that, you know, that when your club can't just say, oh, cool, we're going to be, you know, most clubs will think that they're respectful, and in a way they are. You know, you're taking on a whole bunch of people from the neighborhood, from the community. You're setting pitches, you're setting matches. You've got a whole organization around you, and matches are happening, and it's fantastic. So it's not to say that you're being disrespectful. The undertaking that we're asking for clubs to do is in a crossing the line, you know, drawing a line in the sand and going, right, this is what we're going to do now. So essentially it means two major things. And, you know, I'm not going to get you to read all of this. It's just, I'll send you these slides later on if that's okay, Georgia, as well. Two major things are, the club needs to, make that pledge, you know, cross that line and say, we want to do this. Second, it needs to know what is acceptable and what is unacceptable within the club. I know we've got that in a lot of our code of conducts, and that's fine, but that needs to be there. And then the second thing is that it needs to have sanctions. You need to be able to know that you've crossed that line and that the sanctions will need to be imposed. So, you know, essentially that's the major aspect that's the major part of what we're talking about here, that these things need to be enforceable, you know. And the reason why it's not just business as usual is because the entire club has decided we're going for this. And if the entire club hasn't decided, and we'll talk about how that entire club needs to, but if the entire committee isn't going forward for this, if the entire club isn't going for it, it's not going to work. So the next thing is about setting the tone. And so for this, it means that your club's decided, it's on board, it's going to go for it, it's crossed the line, it's made a pledge, we're going to go for it. The club committee, essentially, I mean, this is a matter of authenticity to some extent, and it does need buy-in from the committee. But if the committee's not presenting those values that the club wants and that the club has agreed on, then it's not going to happen. But a really important part of this role modeling and communication is that you actually get to hear back from the committee, from the members. And so the way that the members can feed back into this means that you'll be able to get a better idea of what your values are going to be and what your code of conducts are going to be. And this is the part where I feel a lot of clubs lose sight of their values and their code of conduct, and it becomes just a document. This is the part where it needs to kick in. This is it. Your values need to be out in the club. They need to be communicated, and how you communicate that is going to be, and communication is a two-way street. So, you know, having your channels of communication spot on, having the you know, let's say you've got your acceptable standards on the wall, having a nice big bold, but actually making sure that people know why they're up there and what that actually means. And so the real benefit of that is going to be that if you're role modeling it, it's on the social media, it's through the social media, it's talked about within the club. We're going for this. This is what we want to do. You're getting people's opinions, you're getting people's perspectives into what is important at the club, and then you're able to get that through the club. And so people understand what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. An important part of this is if the committee is role modeling and actually demonstrating these values, the coaches need to demonstrate the values, because if the coach is going off, then it's just not going to work. If the coach goes off, everyone else goes off, and it's just not going to work. So so essentially this is a bit top down, this aspect, but that's the way the model needs to work. It needs to be fully integrated within the club. When I mentioned respect earlier, there's that that respect that you might have between two people, and that's super important, and it's critical for everyone in the club to have that understanding or that level of respect within each other. But it also means being able to highlight the diversity within your club. There's going to be some people in there that have got rich histories. There's going to be people that have got real, colourful histories of their personalities within the club. There's going to be people who, yoga instructors or whatever it might be. The people in the club have got something to give to other people in the club. And finding those opportunities and actively searching for those opportunities is going to be incredibly important in this whole thing of trying to connect and making sure that people are engaged with, but that other people in the club know who they are. So I mean, at my club, for instance, I'm the person who doesn't coach. I don't do anything other than talk to the parents. That's my role. It's not exactly my only role, but on training days and match days, that's my role. I go around and I just talk to people. I get people that are just standing by themselves or whatever it is. Not going too crazy, but that's my role. That's what I do at the club when I'm there. So I think the most important aspect of this is that you want to make it very obvious that the club and the committee are interested in and respect the members. The members need to feel like they belong. And this is the last one. This one goes full circle. This is the one that makes it go from the club taking on the initiatives and actually leading it, but this is where it comes back, and you're on a good path to having a respectful culture within your club if people feel like they can provide feedback. And the type of feedback they provide is going to also be a huge indicator to let you know if you're on the right track in terms of, you've told everyone, everyone's given their advice. Everyone from the club's told you what they think is important for the club. You've got a code of conduct. You know what's acceptable. You know what's unacceptable. If the feedback that you're getting matches what is acceptable and matches what isn't acceptable, then you're on the right path. You want to have formal, you want to have informal opportunities for feedback. That means, having, someone being able to access an MPIO, Member Protection Information Officer, or, they might have a good relationship with the president and being able to do that, or committee member, but also informal as well. The informal one would be with the president, or just, it's like a verbal sort of push him to the side kind of thing and have a chat. Also anonymous feedback. Because, there can be times where people feel like they're going to lose their position on the team, or their kids might be disadvantaged, or whatever, if you're in seniors or the juniors, whatever, but then they might feel as though they might not completely trust that the system is in place just yet, and that they can be trusted. So it's always good to have an anonymous section, because that'll definitely open it up for a lot of people that may not have been interested in that. So your club needs to know it needs to have a strong dispute resolution process, and they need to be aware of what it takes to mediate issues should they get to a real pointy end. So the main point here this actually does come full circle. When the standards are set and understood, feedback is also received according to these standards. So these are the four these are part of the framework, and they give us proactive ways to set that culture in place. You've got everyone's buying, everyone's involved, but obviously we know that some issues are still going to occur. And this is what I meant by reactive. So there will be situations, despite your greatest efforts, there will still be situations that get heated. And I'm not talking necessarily that they're going to get to, melee stage, but they do obviously, but more in the sense of getting heated and getting that tense. You might not be able to read this, by the way, and it's more that this is available on our website, and this is what I was mentioning earlier about bystander information, bystander intervention. But the only thing I really wanted to mention about this, and this is the reason why I didn't want to have it too illuminated, was at any stage, in any situation that you feel is heated, if you do not feel safe, you need to consider your options. If you're not feeling safe for whatever reason, you need to consider your options. And that's the first thing we've got. That's the S that you can see on the SMART. How you respond to that, how you respond to this heated situation, obviously, if you feel safe, will depend on the extent to which your club has got that culture of respect. If it's got nothing, if it's not really interested at all, if there's no engagement within the club around any of these matters, you're really coming in blind into a situation like this, because you've got no common understanding within the club, and that can be a huge issue, because it means that it's that person's opinion versus your opinion with no club philosophy in mind. It's I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm right because I'm right, for whatever that is, whatever that means. This is on our website, and I'll make sure that gets to you as well. And this is the way that we would respond. We would advise people to respond in a reactive way. But this also means that, and we'll mention this later in a scenario, that it does come up in any case, even if you are a club that's full of that has a real strong culture of respect, you'll still need to address situations, and this does come in handy at those moments, particularly if you're going to talk to someone about an issue, and maybe start the process, maybe not of mediation, but it's conflict resolution anyway. Also, just wanted to mention this is an incredibly powerful thing, especially if you've got an understanding within your club of what is acceptable and isn't acceptable. It helps heaps. So I just want to give a couple of scenarios, and these scenarios, obviously, they're I try not to beat them up too much, but they kind of give you an idea of what your club might look like if it doesn't have a focus on respect, or more precisely, if it doesn't have that engagement with the club and there's no real sense of connection between the members, or really a strong identity for the club. That'll be the first scenario. And then the second scenario might be what you might do as a club. And obviously there's going to be things that we're shortcutting, and one of the things I will talk about is that it is a process. It's not we're a club of respect now. It is a process, and that process does go it's ongoing, and you're part of that process constantly. Clubs can be quite a transient community, so the more people that come through, the more visitors you get to your club. As the seasons go by, you get new people. They see the progress that you've made, and so whilst we might not be the most respectful clubs at all times, striving for that is going to be an incredibly powerful part. So I'll talk about your first scenario. So the first scenario is you're a committee member at your club. There is an intimidating parent that screams at their kid and everyone else, especially the referee. Other parents are too scared to speak up. One day, a parent speaks up and there's a fight. No action is taken against the intimidating parent, who is friends with the president. The other parents don't trust the club to resolve the issue and pull their kids from the team, and the team ends up folding. So that was the first scenario. So here's the second scenario. This is one that the club has decided. Well, we'll hear it. So you're a committee member at a club. You've identified that your club needs to work towards building respect. You raise the topic at a regular general meeting. You talk about club respect in the framework. There's a genuine interest from the committee. All agree to start the process, acknowledging it's not a quick process and will take time. The committee starts the process of communicating with the club, members, coaches, and asking, what does a respectful club look like? Everyone at the club is given an opportunity to have their input in identifying the values of the club. The club puts up a sign at the club of what is acceptable and what isn't. The club is on the front foot about communicating acceptable behaviours and what the values are. Club leaders genuinely believe in it, and it's a focus in all of the communications, including social media. As your club is gaining trust amongst its members, the feedback you receive is more and more in line with what's already been identified as acceptable by the club. You can create an anonymous feedback channel, and through this you do create an anonymous feedback channel, and through this you receive a number of responses from one of the teams that has an intimidating parent. Oh, hold on. So, okay. So following the SMART steps, obviously, so following the SMART steps, so when it's safe, you respectfully have a chat with the intimidating parent. You can respectfully reiterate what's acceptable and isn't acceptable at the club. You give space for that parent to express themselves and their thoughts, providing support details if required. The parent then respects that you've approached them directly. Yes, it's true, they might continue being intimidating after you chat, and you may need to have a chat which may actually lead to sanctions. But by educating the other parents about safety with the SMART steps, and by letting the intimidating parent know that their behaviour is unacceptable, you will be reducing the likelihood of a protracted conflict or a real intense, sudden moment of conflict, of tension. You'll also be setting a really strong standard for the club and for future issues that arise, and you're essentially setting a precedent with each of the issues that you're able to proactively resolve. So there are a couple of examples. I suppose that's I've used all four of those ideas from that section 3 around what committees can do, and I've incorporated them into that scenario, which gives you an idea of what that might look like if you're being proactive around trying to build that culture of respect. And I'll go right back to the top. It's all about prevention of violence and prevention of abuse. So it means that we're looking at reducing the likelihood of this, and some of the big challenges will be when you get away teams coming, or getting new players into the club that haven't quite understood or haven't quite had the opportunity to understand what the club's about just yet. But there's significant off-field benefits to this as well, and that's without that's for another time. But that's a scenario. That's scenario A, scenario B that I've got there, and I suppose I want to go to the next section, which is questions. Does anyone have any questions about what was mentioned or any comments? Whoops.
There's a few in the chat box, Tarek, that I'll just quickly go through.
Yeah.
So somebody
off the screen. Sorry. Yeah.
No, all good. Somebody just asked if you can give some examples on how you collect feedback from members.
Yeah. So hold on. Sorry, I lost you.
That's right.
Am I still on share screen? No? Okay, good. Sorry. So the way, okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening.
Right.
I gotcha. All right. I mean, there's the formal, as I mentioned earlier. So it's obviously around having in particular, what types of systems. Well, your formal systems would be definitely through Okay, so the formal systems that we would be using are through your sports management systems that would have that system that would have those processes, or that clubs would be able to provide their feedback, like similar to TMAP, or through formally contacting one of the committee members directly. It would depend on what the club's approach is. That informal section would be that informal side of it would be to have conversations with people that you do trust within the club, and be able to communicate with them what your issues are, and try to have that resolved from that perspective. And from an anonymous feedback side of things, you could definitely set up a like a Survey Monkey or Survey Planet type portal at the very basic. I mean, that's a free service, and if there are any other services that might be able to provide another one, Leisure Networks and Club Help might have alternative options for that as well. But definitely providing those three in some way that your club finds to be useful would be very helpful.
Great, thank you. Another one that's come through is in your role that you said that you play at your club. So obviously you go around and you speak to people, but are you also calming down the intimidating parent, or speaking with the arrogant player or the coach or anything like that?
Yeah, I know that in some settings, our club's quite young, and the type of support that we have at the club is still developing. So the number of people that we have as leaders and that are capable of taking on responsible duties is quite limited. So we do tend to do more than what we should do. I suppose from a committee member perspective, I'd rather that there was a trusted person that was outside of the committee who was able to respond to those particular types of issues, that would then come to the committee and maybe the president if it escalated. But we're coming from a situation where there was our president was actually the main point of call, and that was just messy. So that needs changing, or that's changed now. But what you want to do is try and keep it away from the committee unless it needs to be part of the committee's understanding and knowledge. And in most cases, you'd hope that it wouldn't need to be, but I suppose that's also where the MPIO might come into it. And depending on the type of club, that may or may not be someone that's involved in that committee.
Great, thank you. Another one that's come through, and I apologise if I don't say this question correctly. So to the person that asked it, feel free to jump in if I'm not making sense of it. But they've just said sometimes when it's suggested that we need a policy for what the answer is, but if we have a policy, we have to follow it up. I suppose they just wanted to know, how do you kind of avoid discussion about that?
I don't understand. How do you avoid discussion of?
Sorry, how do you encourage the discussion around it, around the policy?
Yeah. I suppose if you've got an understanding of what's important for the club and the types of things that are popping up around the club, is that you need a policy around like a hot weather policy, or if they're coming up into in the conversations, and the club is genuinely interested in making sure that the club that the members' perspectives are heard, they need to be part of that conversation. There needs to be that loop that comes back, that you're respecting the views of the members and the wishes of the members and what they're actually wanting. I get that sometimes we might feel like the members have got outrageous requests, or requests that might be a little bit more pedantic for what we're wanting to do at the club. But that also means that gives you an opportunity to expand what the club's community size is, and how important, if that issue is so important that it might mean that you can pull in another volunteer. It's not I suppose the priority here would be to make sure that all the members are satisfied in that sense. And even though I suppose that can be additional work, I suppose that's what you want to do. You want to achieve that over time, and I suppose getting that trust from that person might be the thing that keeps them at the club, but also makes them kind of go, okay, yeah, this club's actually they're doing their best for what this is and where we are.
Great. Do you have any innovative ideas, particularly around getting feedback from younger members or players? Because this person feels like they're sometimes unlikely to use those formal channels to raise issues.
Innovative feedback. Interesting. How would teachers do it? Yeah, that's fascinating. I always find that actually I do. I honestly, I felt like I was on the spot, but I've got something that's kind of interesting actually. There's a thing called actually it doesn't have to be soccer analogy. It can be footy or it can be netball or whatever. But there's a thing called team of life, and that's a really good way of. So it's essentially team of life is around you draw a footy oval, and then you put down 18 players or whatever, and then you have to get the young person to say, forward pocket, who is that in your life? Well, forward pocket is, the full forward, who's that in your life? Well, that's my big brother, because he's always there. He's always, he's always getting in the best ideas, and he's always there, and whatever. Or who's your center player? And that's your dad, because he's always there and he's always helping you. Who's on the wing? Oh, that's my best mate. He's always there. He's always got my back, or whatever. And this way you can kind of identify essentially what's important for that person, and then what themes are coming up as what's important to them, as what might be important, what they're wanting from the club. Might be a good way to also identify some other things that are around club behavior, team behavior and team bonding as well, and some of the issues that might come with that. So I hope that's helped out. But Team of Life at the Dulwich Centre does some really interesting things with that. So hopefully that might help.
Yeah, awesome, great. I think that's all the questions that we have for now, but just to everybody that's on this, we'll be able to pass on Tariq's details, or you can come through me if you have any particular questions or anything that you'd like help with. I know that sometimes being in a setting like this, it can be a little bit intimidating to ask questions, but yeah, we're happy to help, and Tariq has been kind enough to give up his time to assist us. So we really appreciate you coming in tonight and speaking to all of our clubs. So that wraps up this session. So all of the resources, like I mentioned at the start, will be recorded and they'll be available on the AFL Barwon website at the conclusion of the educational week. As I said earlier, tonight is the final night of the AFL Barwon's game plan, and we'd like to thank all of our clubs and all of our speakers for participating. I think it was a very good idea for us to change to online, given the 5-day lockdown we just had. So it's been a huge success, and we're really appreciative of that. The game plan isn't over for 2021. We, of course, have another session coming up with Rana Hussain on how to be an inclusive club. So I encourage you all to head over to that session next, and also keep an eye out for details of the second session for the game plan, which will be operational week. And we're looking to do that halfway through March. So again, thank you all for coming along tonight. We really appreciate it, and I'll see you all soon. Thanks all. Sorry, I just thought I'd get everybody out. And then